Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. Mark here, ready to dive into some seriously cool tech stuff.
And I'm Jenny, always excited to explore how these innovations are actually going to impact our lives. And today, we're talking about CES 2025.
Oh man, CES this year was something else. I mean, every year it's exciting, but the stuff they showcase this time around? We're entering a whole new era, no doubt.
It's interesting you say that, because I was just reading a report from the event. Over 4,500 exhibitors this year. That's a big jump from previous years and a ton of new tech.
And you could feel it too. The energy there was just electric. So where do you want to start? Robots? Self-driving cars? Or maybe some of that VR stuff that made my jaw drop?
Let's start with the robots. I think that's what really captured everyone's attention. I mean, we've been talking about robots for years on this podcast, but this felt different.
Right? It's like, we've seen robots that can do basic tasks, sort of move around, even do a little dance, but these new models, it's a whole different ballgame. This company, Booster Robotics, they had this T1 model that was performing these incredibly intricate movements.
Okay, wait, let me get this straight. We're not just talking about robots that can, vacuum your floor or something. What kind of intricate movements are we talking about here?
So picture this. The T1 was handling tools, picking up small objects, even doing things like unscrewing a tiny bolt, the kind of stuff that requires, real dexterity. It wasn't clunky or slow either. It was smooth, almost human-like in a way.
That's a little unsettling, isn't it? I mean, it's amazing, but also a tiny bit creepy.
I get it. But here's the thing about these robots. It's not just about the physical stuff. They're packing some serious AI too. Enchanted Tools had this other robot, Mirokai, designed for hospitals.
Oh, I read about that. It's supposed to help out with basic tasks, right? Like guiding patients around, answering questions, that sort of thing?
Exactly. And this is where it gets interesting. Mirokai can actually hold a basic conversation. It's not just spitting out pre-programmed responses. Instead, it's using natural language processing, understanding context. It's kind of like talking to a very polite, very helpful robot.
You know what this reminds me of? That case study we saw where they used Mirokai in a few hospitals. They said patient satisfaction actually went up.
Yeah, I was just about to bring that up. It's fascinating, isn't it? A 15% increase, if I remember correctly, and nurses reported they could focus more on actual patient care, less on the routine stuff.
But that brings up the whole robots taking our jobs debate, doesn't it? I mean, it's great that nurses can focus on more critical tasks, but what about other jobs that these robots could potentially replace?
That's the big question, right? And it's not a simple one. I was listening to this talk by Dr. Ayanna Howard, a robotics expert from Georgia Tech, and she made a good point. She said these robots are more about complementing human skills, not replacing them entirely.
That's an interesting perspective. So it's more like the robots handle the mundane, repetitive tasks, freeing up humans to do the more complex, creative, or empathetic work?
Precisely. But we also have to consider the data, right? The market for these humanoid robots is projected to hit $3.9 billion by 2030. That's not pocket change. There's a huge amount of investment going into this.
It seems like we're at this turning point, where we have to decide how we're going to integrate these technologies into society. Speaking of turning points, let's shift gears to autonomous vehicles.
Good idea. Because that's another area where CES just blew me away. We've been talking about self-driving cars for what feels like forever, but this year, it felt like we made a significant leap forward.
I agree. It's one thing to hear about the concept, but it's another to see it in action. What stood out to you the most?
Definitely Hyundai Mobis's M-Brain system. It's this tech that monitors the driver's attention levels. So even in a semi-autonomous car, it's making sure you're still engaged and ready to take over if needed.
That's pretty cool. It's like a safety net, in a way. But what about fully autonomous vehicles? Did you see anything interesting on that front?
Oh yeah. John Deere had this autonomous tractor. I know. It sounds a bit out there, but think about it. Farms are huge, and this thing can work 24/7, planting, harvesting, all without a human driver.
That's impressive. I can see how that would be a major shift for agriculture. Okay, so we've got robots that can perform surgery and tractors that can drive themselves. What about something a little more fun?
You mean like the VR and AR stuff? Because that was also pretty mind-blowing, to put it mildly.
Exactly. We've tried VR headsets before, but it sounds like the technology has come a long way.
Oh, it has. The new headsets are lighter, more comfortable, and the resolution is insane. But the real game changer, if you'll pardon the pun, is the haptic feedback.
Haptic feedback? Remind our listeners what that is exactly.
Right, so basically, it's technology that simulates touch. So in a VR game, if you pick up a virtual object, you can actually feel its weight, its texture. It's wild.
I can see how that would make the experience a lot more immersive. It's not just about what you see anymore, it's about what you feel.
And it's not just for gaming. They were showing how this tech could be used for training simulations, remote collaboration. Imagine architects being able to feel a virtual building model.
That's pretty incredible. But I wonder, is it really ready for the mainstream? Or is it still a bit too niche, a bit too expensive for most people?
That's a fair question. I think we're still a few years away from it being truly mainstream, but the advancements are happening fast. And hey, remember how we talked about AI being integrated into everything? That's playing a huge role here too.
Ah, right. AI is the thread that ties all of this together, isn't it? It's not just about robots, or self-driving cars, or VR. It's about how AI is making all of these things smarter, more connected.
Exactly. NVIDIA's keynote really hammered that home. They showed how AI is being used in everything from gaming to robotics to, yes, autonomous vehicles. It's like AI is becoming the foundation for all these different technologies.
It's a bit overwhelming when you think about it, isn't it? I mean, 78% of the exhibits at CES had some form of AI integration. That's a huge number.
It is. And it makes you wonder, what are the implications of all this? We talked about job displacement, but what about things like privacy, data security? These are big questions that we need to grapple with.
And I saw that even Elon Musk chimed in on Twitter about the solar-powered car that was showcased, saying it was an exciting development, even though he also said it's just one piece of the sustainable transportation puzzle.
That's right. I'm glad you mentioned Aptera's solar car. That was another standout. A car that can charge itself as you drive. That's pretty cool, even if you take into consideration the limitations in cloudy weather.
It's all about balance, right? We need to be excited about these advancements, but also cautious, thoughtful. We need to make sure that this technology is used for good, that it benefits everyone, not just a select few.
Well said, Jenny. And that's why conversations like these are so important. We need to keep talking about these issues, keep asking the tough questions.
So what's the big takeaway from all of this? What's the one thing you want our listeners to remember from this episode?
That we're on the cusp of a major technological shift. The things we saw at CES 2025, they're not science fiction anymore. They're real, and they're coming fast. And we need to be ready to adapt, to learn, and to shape this future in a responsible way.
And from my end, I'd say it's about staying curious, staying informed, and staying engaged. This isn't just about technology, it's about our society, our future, and we all have a role to play in that.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap things up. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of CES 2025, everyone.
And as always, keep exploring, keep questioning, and we'll see you next time.